This is Support is Sexy, episode 169. Let it flow. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I interview inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and their lessons to help you take your business and your life to the next level and create something sexy. Here we go. Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm so thrilled to have you here. It just would not be the same without you. So today I wanted to stop by briefly just to tell you, I enjoy all of the interviews that I do with these fantastic women entrepreneurs all around the world. I talk about how much I love it often. You already know. The past couple of days, I've been interviewing women who have, in one way or another, been talking about flow. Now, flow is something that we hear a lot about nowadays. People talking about sort of getting in your groove, for lack of a better term, or finding your own pattern or rhythm or something that really gets you in the space where you feel like you're doing what you need to do the way you need to do it. It's moving along. It doesn't feel like work. Even if you are working, you just find your flow. And that is what I wanted to talk to you about today. The importance of getting into that space where you really find your flow. So not even that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and you're loving it, which is part of your flow. And that's something I certainly feel with doing this podcast. But the women I interviewed, and you'll hear those coming up very soon in the next couple of weeks. But the ways they talked about finding flow were in a few ways. One way was talking about mom flow. So with this woman, Joanne, who you'll hear from, she talks about finding mom flow and being able to handle motherhood or balance motherhood with all the other things that we want to do as women, as human beings, and finding your flow and doing that with grace. And I will say with grace and ease. That is something that came to mind when I spoke to Joanne. And then talking to Tiffany, which you'll hear more about later. Tiffany talks about the importance of letting some things go in order to find your flow so that you don't feel overwhelmed or like you're not living up to these expectations that you really installed on yourself. Find your flow, not the expectations you put on yourself or that you believe other people are putting on you. Then I also talked to another woman, Pat, in the UK, who talks about being middle-aged and finding your flow. And that looks different for everyone. So it might be that you're ready to retire at that point and you want to get into something totally new, or you're at this certain point in your career and you want to take it to the next level. But whatever it is, finding your flow and not being caught up in, again, other people's expectations of what other people think you should be doing at that age or that stage of your life, or what old people, quote unquote, old people, even though middle age 50s is definitely not old now, but what you should be doing at this point or that you should be slowing down. Pat talks about finding your flow. And then another woman that I spoke to, Trisha, who you'll hear from very soon, she talked about flow in the space of coming to a moment of completion with the business that she was running and then going into something else that was totally different. And we talked about having the sort of conversation with yourself and getting okay or settling it within yourself before you really face other people with this decision, because sometimes, the chatter can get, even inner chatter, but the outside chatter can get to you and make you feel like you're making the mistake of moving on from something, even though something in you tells you that it is complete and time to move on. So I hope it doesn't sound cryptic how I'm sharing the messages from these women. I want you to hear their full interviews, just giving you a little preview. But in all, it just kept coming up, this idea of finding your flow. And I will have to tell you, for me, I feel like with the podcast and some of the things I'm doing, I'm starting to feel a little bit of a flow. I've been in the past somewhat rigid around, the times that I have to post the podcast. I do try to have it up at a certain time every day, 4:00 in the morning for each day. I'm trying very hard to get ahead, but right now it's right up to the last minute whenever I post them. But this past week, especially being out of Atlanta and going to New York, visiting with friends, really getting a chance to relax and sort of ease into things, I'm not being as rigid this week, at least, around the time that things post or what it has to be about, or, I have to get these interviews up while I'm away. It was stressing me out a little bit because I didn't have all of my setup and all of those things. I have my laptop. I can certainly do things from my laptop, but still, it just didn't have to be a certain way. And I decided to take it easy, and let it flow. So I share all of this with you to say, think about what you're up to these days, and are you taking it easy? Are you handling it with grace? This doesn't mean you're not going for what you need to go for to make something happen. This doesn't mean that you're no longer ambitious and all of those things, but are you finding your flow? Or are you doing the thing that you think is expected of you, of what you quote unquote should be doing, these false expectations that you're putting on yourself or that you're letting people project onto you? Are you taking all of that on, or are you finding your own flow? Because even if it's not in the structure or in the box of what you think it should be or what everyone else thinks it should be, when you find your flow and you commit to that and being in that space and having that grace and ease, you will find that things come along easier. Things flow a lot better. Your mind is more at ease. So as an example, with these solo episodes that I do, I love doing them, but they are a challenge sometimes only because I want to make sure I have something to talk about. I don't want to just talk for the sake of talking, even though some of the episodes you might feel like that. I don't know. You let me know if that's what you think. But I do like to wait until I really have something to talk about, and I have it in a sense of a story. I'm a storyteller. I'm a writer. I've worked in media for several years, as many of you know. So when I think about even a podcast or a story, I'm thinking, what's the structure of the story? What's the message? What's the lead? All of those things. Even within a podcast, I have that idea. I have an overarching theme. What's the message? What are the points I'm going to make? What does it sound like? All of that goes through my head before I even record an episode, even though when I do them, unless it's something that's longer like a series, I don't have a script. I'm just talking, thinking, talking, letting it all flow, our keyword for today. But I do always like to wait until I have some kind of idea in mind, as opposed to, oh, I have to do a solo episode. Let me just record something and say something and get it up and get it out. I don't want to do that. One, because that's not in integrity, and that's not doing it with excellence. And also because you all deserve better. But I admit I have those moments where I feel sort of anxious about it because I'm thinking, oh, it's not up at a certain time, or, oh, I haven't done anything yet, and that kind of thing. No more of that. Letting it flow. When it's the solo episodes, even sometimes when it's the interviews, but the interviews I like to get up early in the morning so you can start your day with them if you like to listen to the podcast in the morning. These solo episodes, the lessons come when they come. I do still push myself and have some guardrails around. I want to do it each day, for example, even though this is late at night, but I'm going to get it up tonight. Still have some guardrails around it with whatever you're doing, the same thing, because you do want to have some goal or some objective and give yourself some room to play, but have some guardrails around that thing so you can stay on track. But it doesn't have to be a certain way. It doesn't have to look a certain way. As we always say, don't get caught up on the how of something happen. You want to make it happen. What's the way that you can do it with grace and ease and letting it flow so that it comes out as its best, so that it's not forced when it doesn't have to be forced. I think things can be urgent. You can have a need to take care of something and make it urgent without it being forced. And that's my thing. For me, it is urgent that I do the podcast 5 days a week, deliver this content to you in the way that I have committed to doing up until this point. It's urgent, but it doesn't have to feel forced. And having the conversation with these women and many of the other women I've spoken to, but this is a message that's been coming up again and again. And I'm kind of woo-woo. So I always try to pay attention when a message or something keeps coming up in some way again and again. Maybe this is something that I needed to hear, which is why I'm sharing, because maybe it's something that you need to hear. Find your flow. What is your flow? What works for you? What isn't so forced for you? What feels right for you? What is the thing, as these women talked about, that really speaks to you, that you want to do? What is the way that you want to do it? Something that is uniquely you and not forced, not pushed on you, or not something that you feel like you're forcing yourself to do just for the sake of doing it in a certain way. Find your flow. Because you know how you flow is going to be different than how somebody else does. And if you're okay with that, you can really find a space and a rhythm all your own. So make sure you find your flow in everything that you do with your business, with your family, with your career, with anything that you're managing. What is the way that makes the most sense for you so that you can do it with grace and with ease? Everything doesn't have to be hard. That's another thing that I'm learning more and more. For you to be successful at something, or for it to quote unquote count, it doesn't mean it has to be hard. In fact, we've done a podcast episode on this idea of what would this look like if it were easy. I'm starting to ask myself that more now. What would this look like if it were easy? Now, some things are going to be hard. You're going to have to push. You're going to have to push through. There might be deadlines or different things that you have to meet. You want to make it happen. You've given yourself some goals and some objectives. But what would it look like if it were easy? What would it look like if you added your own flow to this thing? If you found the sweet spot and the way that you can find your own rhythm, your own flow to make whatever this is happen? It won't be any less grand. It won't be any less special if you do it in a way that doesn't cause you a lot of anxiety or stress or any of those things. You can still be your wonderful, ambitious self. Do it with grace and ease and with your own flow. All right. So thank you all, as always, for listening. I appreciate you. You know, we are coming into the last few days of the Support is Sexy campaign on ifundwomen.com. It has been such a pleasure to share that experience with you all. And I appreciate any of you who have donated. It's helping the podcast and supporting the podcast, keeping us going, covering a lot of the different things that we have to cover for the podcast. So go to supportissexylove.com and take a look at the rewards there. Great information, great resources, great prizes that are there for you. Supportissexylove.com. I really appreciate, as I said, anyone who has donated. I appreciate anyone who has watched the video, anyone who has commented. This is the last week, so I really would love to have you guys take a look over there, see the great rewards, and hopefully they appeal to you and you can make a donation of any amount. Any amount is appreciated. Supportissexylove.com. Countdown, our last few days. I learned so much from this experience, which I will share with you all at the end of the campaign. But please go over to supportissexylove.com and check it out. All right. Thank you as always for listening. You know, I appreciate you. And for now, go out there and create something sexy. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care.